Relating to what Bruce said, it's very interesting, the topic of learning entrepreneurship. Whenever you talk to entrepreneurs, they always say, there's no way you can teach entrepreneurship. However, they also say it was so much easier to do the second startup after I did the first one. So there must be something in it. Okay, we try and make it easier for the students to sort of start their second startup, right? One more thing that I wanted to say was strategy. Okay, we had a series of programs we called Out of the Books and Into the Trenches, business strategy. Because I'm a believer in strategy. I don't believe in MBAs, but I believe in strategy. And I think that many good companies thought strategically. And if you ever heard Eli Horowitz, Israel's greatest manager ever, he said all he did was what was written in the books. And my good friend Amir Milo, who started Equivio, a wonderful company, always speaks about doing what the books say, and he's been doubling at least his sales every year since inception. I leave it to you, for you now. Who would like to ask a question? Eric.
To any of the panelists who would like to respond, I'd be curious to your thoughts on Chris Ardress's and others who have said there is nothing as practical as a good theory.
Who's first?
I know what Bruce sounds like already, so either.
The great thing about a theory is that you don't have to repeat others' mistakes. Because if a theory is good, one thing about a great theory is McKinsey described it as MEC. If you could get at something that's MEC, mutually exclusive and completely exhaustive. If everything in the theory fits in a category and only that category, and you could use it to replicate and predict things, you save the cost of making mistakes, and you could learn from others. So that's very practical, isn't it? So that's my answer.
I don't really think I have anything to say on the subject. I believe that something that hasn't been talked about very much is intuition. How do you decide what to do? Is it based upon theories? Is it based upon other people's experience? Is it based on case studies? I mean, intuition is the sum total of all your own personal experience of what works and what doesn't work, and add in a flavor of you've got to enjoy doing whatever hell it is. And I think your intuition will be more accurate if you're talking about something that you enjoy. So I think this is something, if one could figure out a way of cultivating it, that people have the innate abilities which somehow get squashed by the education systems, whatever they are. You know, I think it was who was it? Was it Johnny Carson's or was it George Bernard Shaw who said something to the effect that education will smooth rough diamonds and kill polished diamonds. I mean, you can destroy somebody's capabilities by educating them in a lot of stuff which turns out not to be right for them and not to enhance their ability to be successful in whatever they do.
Well, I'm a big believer in doing and not, talking about or philosophy. But I must say that I always enjoy reading and trying to learn from others, like Ed said. For example, there is a book about sales called Influence. It was written by a professor in Arizona State, I think, and he did some research about how salespeople work, and I read the book and I said, wow, some of these ideas can really apply to 1 hour translation. We made some small graphic changes. increase the sales of a certain thing we do like 3 times. Just so theory is important, but the actual application is what counts at the end of the day, I think.
Another question over there?
Yes, there is a lot of talking about what academy people don't tend to do a lot of startups or to do a lot of entrepreneurship work. And my question is specifically to Ofer and Bruce, because they're both different ends of the scale. What do you think about, is the academy a safe place? And being an entrepreneur is a lot about taking the risk. Is there a safe place in the academy? Is something that prevents people from going and doing entrepreneurship?
First off, from
Summarize the question for the audience.
So who won the war? Is academy? Do people go to be in academy because they it's safer than doing a startup? So first, from what I understand, Bruce did more companies than I did, and in more fields. So I don't know if we are on the other ends. I don't know what it is like in. I do have one friend who's academic and is very smart. And as much as I was trying over the years to persuade him to come and join me in one of every company I do almost, he's coming at 10, going to the pool, going to lunch. Working nobody knows what it's theoretical mathematics or something. Nobody knows what he's doing. He was at Harvard and now he's in Princeton and he's enjoying life. So,
not to disparage business professors, but law professors, our neighboring building, one of the great law schools, Chicago Law School, there's a expression that the professors at Chicago Law School know everything about the law except for how to find the courthouse. So, yeah, I think that there's something to an ivory tower. I think there's something about, tenure. It's great to have a position for life. But, that said, there's a lot of successful faculty that have started companies. At MIT, there's, a huge number. As an example, with the MIT Enterprise Forum, Bose, Akamai, tons of companies, A123 that I'm losing a fortune in. But all these were, started by professors.
Did they give up their tenure?
No, I guess not. Some did. One person who did. There's a guy, Howard, and I'm sorry, I just forgot his name, but he was teaching at Wharton. He was teaching computer science. And, the computer field was taking off. And he said one too many students asked him, if you're so smart in computer science, why aren't you a millionaire? And he left a tenured position at Wharton and is very successful and has, spoken. The last MIT Enterprise Forum event I went to, he spoke. And, yeah, some do get it. But, again, this idea of the ivory tower is very realistic, whether it's a lawyer, law professor who can't find the law school, or this finance professor. One of my nightmare classes, in corporate finance, he's going on and on about the impact of dividend policy on stock price, analyzing data for 70 years. And if they do this, it'll change the stock price 0.1%. And, if it's a whatever. And I'm like, 0.1% of 1%. The stock I bought just dropped, 40% on no news. What are you, like, rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic? Get out there and see what's happening. But on the other hand, there's a lot of great stuff. Professors who have gone out and do it. Professors that have been, tremendous mentors, and support. And, professors who have done some great research. When I started this company, Stock Central in Australia, when we saw the online revenue falling, we, wanted to figure out how can we monetize this. And I, went to, databases and looked up academic journals. It was a great journal on, it was called, it was basically on how to price something where the marginal cost of production is zero. Hal Varian and Carl Shapiro, called versioning. And it was, I don't know how I remember that 15 years later, but it was brilliant and it really helped us. So, I think there's both. Like in the world, there's, professors that will, use only a blackboard and chalk and mimeograph notes from 1975, and professors that are on the cutting edge, whether at MIT or Stanford, that are doing amazing things and helping amazing entrepreneurs.
Or Tel Aviv University.
Or Tel Aviv University, of course. Or Pace.
Ed, do you have anything to add? Well, I'd like to add that only a few weeks ago, Anobit was sold to Apple for over $300 million. And this is a Tel Aviv University company. I wanted to mention Amimon, who was started by MIT Enterprise Forum board, member of the board, Meir Feder, who's an MIT alum, which is extremely successful. And there are many other very interesting companies started by professors in various universities. So you can do both if you're bright enough. All right.
This is some kind of a tease. Maybe the only management book that needs to be taught in an MBA is Darwin's Origin of Species and Natural Selection.
No, but the father of entrepreneurship is Schumpeter, and his theory is creative destruction. I think it's exactly the same thing. And one of the slides I took out was exactly on that. In the Great Depression, that fight between Keynes and Schumpeter, should we have government spending all that, or should we let these companies die? Should we let GM die so Tesla and better place cars could take over? So Schumpeter is the creative destruction. If we're all producing buggy whips and the automobile comes, we want to stop it. But the best thing is to let that be destroyed and create a new industry. Sun Microsystems, before they finally went under, Scott McNealy's last line of computers was called the Darwin line, and he said, if we don't make our own products extinct, our competitors will.
Yes.
My name is Gideon. I'm an entrepreneur for the last 21 years, and I have the MBA degree from Jerusalem from 25 years ago, so it's a long time ago. But my question is, I think the only constant and permanent thing in business is actually only change. Change is the only constant thing in business. What change is happening these days in the business school theory and content and program related to the mess that we have for the last 5 years or so in the capitalistic world and business worldwide? What actually is going to happen in the coming years?
I think there's a lot of change, and I agree, and that's why my first slides were to show 1,100 different automobile brands to show how much things change, right? All but one of them went bankrupt, Ford. There are changes going on, and schools, especially business schools, are trying to change. One of the things with accreditation that was mentioned, AACSB, is that you have to show that students are actually learning something, validation of that. And, one thing is with practical experience, there's a fine line between wanting to match academic theory to professional practice, but not wanting to be a trade school and bring in, a bunch of people telling war stories. So how do we do that? One thing we're about to do at Pace, when I get back along with 100,000 other things, is to launch an entrepreneurship lab, where people will actually work on startups, but in an academic environment. So again, that academic, theory and professional practice. And I think it's just a realization that we have to, validate learning and be more experiential without being a trade school. And
ethics.
You know, ethics, I think the first, strangely, I think entrepreneurs tend to be much more ethical than big business people. I mean, when I look at traits of entrepreneurs, yes, no, it is, and you know that the guy fills me. I could give you a ton of examples, but one thing I'm going at after the 2000. Okay, I'll.
Because as much as I regard, business schools are not for entrepreneurs, but rather for people who may work for entrepreneurs. So about the ethics thing.
So the ethics. I think we do a lot of ethics. We have someone in residence who does nothing but ethics. We try to weave ethics through all the courses, not just make a one course, because then it's easy to say it just belongs to them. But again, on a practical level, there's some great stuff out of Carnegie Mellon University on ethics, many cases. Was just asked to speak for MBAs, the top schools in the world. There's something called the Kairos Society. Kairos is also opportunity, but the Greek side with time. And after the 2008 financial crisis, they got together and said, what should we be doing, the top MBA schools in the world? And I was impressed with what they're doing and what they're able to do. And just after, in 4 years, they're holding this annual meeting at the UN and at the New York Stock Exchange, and their focus, the students took it upon themselves to say, you know, it's time. This is the opportune time where Kairos comes from, specifically to look at ethics and what are they learning and why.
I'd like to change the subject slightly and point out something, that Israel is not mini America. Over 50% of the MBA graduates from Wharton go into investment banking. How many investment banking jobs are there in Israel? What percentage of MBAs that come out of Israeli universities go into investment banking? What percentage that come out of Wharton go into entrepreneurship? 1% or 2%. What percentage of those out of Israel? Most of them. Or small companies, or high-tech companies, or whatever. So I think that it is a little difficult to relate our experience here to the very thorough experience that you can learn from abroad. The model doesn't transfer. Some of the things, ethics is relevant. I'll just tell you one little funny story about that. This lovely lady one day persuaded me on a Friday morning, which is my best tennis game of the week, to fill in for her at a lecture at Technion. I had to schlep to Haifa too. So, and I said, how many people in the class? She said, about 20. I said, what's the subject? She said, choose one. So I thought, just to be provocative, I chose the title, Has the Venture Capital Industry Heard of Business Ethics? And apparently they stuck posters up around there. And when I got to Haifa, I went to the room, and they moved me to there, and they moved me to the room. Over 200 people showed up on a Friday morning, including many of the academic staff, because they were all convinced that the venture capital industry had not heard of business ethics and they wanted to hear of it. Israel is different in so many respects to America that I think you cannot take the experience, however valuable and interesting it is, and apply it directly to our own situation. I'll give you one last example. Repeat entrepreneurs. What percentage of successful entrepreneurs in America become repeat entrepreneurs? 5%. 5%. You know Paul Gompers at Harvard? He's a good friend of ours. 5%. What is it in Israel? Christ, it's 55%. And then you've got the repeat to the power, not 2, but 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. Things are different here. MBAs are different here. The reason for doing them is different here, and the value you're going to get from them are different here, and the things you aren't taught that are relevant are different here. So it's a great title for a meeting, but be aware that it's kind of country-specific, in my view.
I think we will end here. Thank you for the speakers. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you all for being here tonight. See you next month.